Welcome to Hockey Night in New York, where Islanders hockey always reigns supreme. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, Hockey Night in New York is your home for all things Isles. Now, let's drop the puck and get this party started.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Hockey Night in New York. Welcome to the program, everyone. It is Sunday, October 8th, 2023, coming at you live from Floored Media in Rockville Center for another fantastic show here at Hockey Night in New York. Mr. Arthur Staple of The Athletic is back covering the Islanders. He's going to be joining us a little bit later. My name is Sean Cuthbert. With me, as always, is Mr. Stefen Rosner. Stefen, how are you?
I think I have to say I'm doing fantastic, Sean.
Yeah,
that's the route we got to go.
I'm glad to hear that. Fantastic's the word of the month, I think.
Word of the month.
Word of the year,
yeah.
Perhaps. But glad to hear you're doing well. Welcome back to another edition of Hockey Night New York here at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. And, of course, before we dive into the main stuff here, we want to thank our wonderful sponsors, starting with the great Blue Line Deli and Bagel. Satisfy your hunger at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington and, of course, 217 Carlton Avenue in East Islip. Check out the menu. Order ahead at BlueLineDeli.com. Also, for the season opener on Saturday, stop into the Huntington location between 5 a.m. and 4 p.m. for a chance at free bagels, free bagel giveaways, kids' T-shirts, potentially Islanders tickets, and more. So get your asses to Blue Line Deli and Bagels in Huntington, and you might go home with some nice prizes and, of course, some fantastic food.
Fantastic.
And also, yeah, fantastic. And also, we are proud to be sponsored by Main Street Board Game Cafe in Huntington Village. Find your crowd and unplug your game at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. And, of course, a big thanks to our new sponsor, Razor and Kniff, attorneys at law, New York's premier trial lawyers, ready to fight for you. Check them out at razorandkniff.com, R-A-I-S-E-R, and Kniff, K-E-N-N-I-F-F.com. And, of course, a big thanks to Floored Media here in Rockville Center. So, Stefen, preseason is over. Everybody can exhale, including the Islanders. And somehow after this, they have basically a week off, which is kind of uncommon after preseason.
Yeah.
So not sure how that ended up happening for the Islanders, but here we are. So we can run through this real quickly. Obviously, not the most successful week, but it doesn't really matter because it doesn't count. But they drop a 6-5 loss in New Jersey on Monday, 5-2 loss to Philadelphia in Philly on Thursday. Friday, a 3-0 loss versus the Devils at UBS Arena. Does it matter?
The results? No.
Okay.
But I think with preseason hockey, you're playing the game within the game. For example, if you lose, it's all right. But if the Islanders wanted to focus on the power play, and the power play does well, but they lose the game, okay, you focus on the power play.
Sure.
Or 5-on-5 game was good, but special teams shorthanded didn't go well. So you play the game within the game. Unfortunately for the Islanders, nothing really went well in those games. I mean, yeah, you score 5 goals. That's probably good enough to win games, especially when, Sorokin's in goal and he's on his game and he's not worrying about having to make these ridiculous saves. Like, he's not going to do that in preseason. He's not going to hurt himself.
Right.
So I think you play the game within the game. Unfortunately, I feel like the Islanders failed themselves with that.
And we did make an argument in the last show or two saying there are reasons why these games do matter, but not so much the result. Like you said, it's more just to kind of work the kinks out so that the coaching staff can figure out what lineups he's going to go with, see who works with who. But at the end of the day, they're not really inspiring confidence heading into the regular season for any fans that were watching these games where, it would have been nice, especially you look at like that last game, right, where the Islanders pretty much put out close to their NHL squad against the Devils team that pretty much didn't do that. And they not only did they lose the game, they got shut out. And, after the game previous against the Flyers, you say, oh, well, the Islanders put out an AHL squad and the Flyers put out their NHL squad. So no big deal. They lost. But then you flip the script and they still lose either way. But again, I've said this too. Like, I remember back in the 90s, right, the mid-90s, like the Palffy squads and stuff, right? And maybe even later on, when the Islanders were, still trying to get into the playoffs in, the early the 2010s or whatever, with, Michael Grabner and stuff like that in the team. And they'd go, 4-1 in the preseason. You'd be like, all right, they're looking pretty good, right? But then the season would happen, teams would actually show up and play a real hockey game, and, they end up missing the playoffs and all that. So, I would just say anybody who may or may not be concerned about the results of these preseason games, yeah, sure, maybe keep in the back of your mind, okay, they could have made me feel a little bit better about how things went, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter until game one starts, and that starts on Saturday.
I think Friday, if you're looking at the worst losses, I think it's Friday. And we spoke to Nelson before the game, and Brock said, we want to have a good game tonight because this is our film. This is our full NHL lineup. This is our film. We have to sit with this. We want to have good film on our power play, our 5-on-5 play, all that stuff. That way when we prepare for Buffalo, we have good film to work off of. So that's why I said it was important. Unfortunately, after the game, I brought that up again. I was like, how much does it impact you? And he goes, yeah, this isn't good because it's not good film. You pretty much look and say, okay, everything we did tonight, let's not do that. Essentially that's what you have. So I think if you're looking at why certain losses matter, it's the last one because now you have a whole week where it's pretty much practice film you're going to have to work with because the game was just pretty bad on their part in all aspects.
Do you have any takeaways from watching these games, either on the positive or the negative side? Just maybe some habits you're looking at, like, they might want to, fix that before the game start, or hey, that looked good, the PK, the power play, whatever it is. But is there anything you might have noted, looking at these games and being like, this is something to keep an eye on as the season begins?
Yeah, we'll start with goaltending. Again, I'm a goalie, so I watch them a lot. But Varlamov, in a couple of these games, struggled to catch pucks. Now,
yeah, I saw you mention
now
that on
it could
Twitter,
be as something as breaking in a glove. Could be that, but it seemed, it was his first game of the preseason. He had that issue, but that's rust. And again, he didn't play in the playoffs at all, and barely played down the stretch. We got off much longer than everybody else. Well, then in his last preseason game, against the Flyers, you saw the same issue, and then you're wondering, okay, just something to keep an eye on. The other thing too is communication in their own zone. A lot of backdoor plays wide open for the opponents. And again, the Islanders, sure, they're going to rely heavily on Sorokin, and their offense is going to have to be much better. But, defense is still the bread and butter of this team, and their defensive structure has to be a lot stronger. And again, those backdoor plays is just about communicating who's taking that guy. So that's
positioning
huge.
Is important, and that's something you'd like to think you're going to see in preseason hockey. But again, like these guys, they're kind of playing to shake the rust off. Now, you have some of the younger guys that are playing for spots, and those guys are going to be busting their tails. And maybe some of the guys who don't necessarily have a guaranteed spot in the starting lineup might be saying, okay, I better, show well here, just to make sure Lane is still has me penciled into that role, whatever it is, right? But for the most part, you guys got guys out there shaking off rust, just kind of getting their game legs ready for game one. And I'm not trying to start the excuse train here heading into the season, but it's just you got to take a lot of these games with a grain of salt, and like they're not going into the corners 100% head first. Like there's hits, there's heading and stuff like that, and there's physical play, of course. But I don't think you're going to really see what this team is made of until the puck drops on Saturday.
Yeah, and again, going back to preseason doesn't count. You have two examples of how much preseason does count for the Islanders. One, Palmieri got into a game.
Yeah, we didn't think that was going to happen.
We didn't think that was going to happen. Yeah. That kind of changes everything in terms of your lineup outlook. And again, going back to Oliver Wahsltrom, guy, ACL injury in late December, doesn't get back, skated this summer. Pretty much those games were his only taste of hockey since then. And you saw that he quite wasn't up to speed just yet. Who knows what that means for him on opening night. But that's why preseason matters. Guys like that get into games that if there was no preseason, you're going right into a season coming off injury. So that's, again, another reason why preseason is important.
Yeah, and let's focus on him a little bit because I know we want to talk about the lineup in depth a little bit more, but we're going to be breaking for Arthur soon. But let's talk about Wahsltrom here.
Yeah.
Obviously he was out for a long time. He had to rehab the knee. He had to, and he said a lot of great things about the process and where his mindset is, which is great. You want to hear that. Yeah. But the question is, how long is it going to take for him to catch up? And I think what it looks like so far is he hasn't yet, and he's still kind of trying to find a place. And obviously everybody around the team, fans included, are looking at this guy and hoping that he's finally going to get it together, and he's finally going to be a guy that they can rely on to score goals 5-on-5 and on the power play, and just kind of finally carve a regular niche in an important role in this team. And that's what we're waiting for. And I think the question now is, and when we start talking more about the lineup, that it'll come into play, but where is he at right now? Like, how close is he, and what does he have to worry about as far as maybe some of the players he's competing with?
Yeah, and that's the other thing for Wahsltrom is he didn't really stand out in preseason play while others fighting for spots did. Again, they're teammates. They want to see everyone do well, but Gauthier proved to Lambert that he has no reason to not be in the starting lineup. A guy like Fasching, too, before his injury that he's dealing with, did the same thing. So you look, and Lambert's got to do what's best for the team. If Wallstrom's not 100%, which, again, physically he might be 100%, but that injury, that's usually a year until someone's back to normal, a regular non-athlete guy. Now you're talking about a guy who's only 8 months or whatever in. It's going to take a couple of months. It took Anders Lee. I mean, he played, but it took Anders Lee a couple of months until he looked like himself. And unfortunately for the Islanders, how tough this division is, how tough the conference is, you can't have somebody out there that's not 100% full game-wise when there's guys that are that could benefit the team more.
Well, that's the tough thing that Lane is going to have to gauge here, right? Because I think we all kind of know that Wally has the most upside as far as a guy who's going to be able to contribute offensively. When you look at guys he might be squaring off with in the Holmstroms, the Gauthiers, and you know, throughout the lineup there, and the Fashings of the world maybe, right? So I guess the question is, how long is Lane willing to wait for Wally to get to that point? And is he even at the point where he gets into the lineup on day one, right? And then if he is, how long is Lane willing to wait until he finds a stride? And that's like the balance, and that's kind of what's working against Wahsltrom, is where he needs the time to catch up and get back to NHL speed, but at the same time, if it takes him too long, you got guys chomping at the bit to take that spot away from him.
And I guess that's the positive here, is that the Islanders did make depth signings. For example, if Wahsltrom wasn't ready, right? Are they going to an AHL prospect who's not ready? And then you have the whole issue of him getting into games, but he has to get acclimated to NHL speed, things like that. So the Islanders do have, again, like guys like Gauthier, Holmstrom, who's played, Fashings, in case Wahsltrom isn't ready yet. But I think this is a huge week for Wahsltrom. You have a whole 5 days, right? Unfortunately, the issue with Wahsltrom right now is catching up to NHL speed. The only way you could do that is by playing games. So the question is, you're out of preseason games. So the question is, like you said, does Lambert allow Wahsltrom 5, 6, 7 games to prove that he can get there? Or does he say, listen, you know, we're going to have someone else play for you. Keep practicing. Because, again, he can't go down to Bridgeport and get conditioning stints because he's not waiver exempt. And that's where that kind of stuff falls into place, where, you know, you want him to get games, and the AHL is probably the best place for him to keep playing if he's not going to start, but they're not going to risk sending him down.
Yeah, there's some tough choices for Lane to make. We're going to get into those later, but we got to break now because Arthur Staple from The Athletic is going to join us. So I want to thank you all for tuning in to twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. We will be right back.
I don't want to hear it. It's over. I can't believe they fell short again.
Yeah, but they played so well. They made it to the semifinals 2 years in a row.
The semifinals aren't the cup. God damn it, I hate those Lightning.
They'll get another shot at it next year.
I don't even want to talk about it anymore, all right? They lost, okay? Let me just sit here and enjoy the one thing that makes me a little bit happy. This fresh, delicious, tasty, meaty, turkey-filled Blue Line Combo. I eat 3 every day to help keep me strong.
Hey, Donnie, can I have one of those?
Coming right up. Talk about a blast from the Blue Line.
Blue Line Deli and Bagels. Our goal is to make you a hero.
Thanks for giving some time to our sponsors. Ready to talk more Isles? The train rolls on right here on Hockey Night in New York.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The train rolls on here at Hockey Night in New York. And joining us, returning to covering the New York Islanders, Mr. Arthur Staple of The Athletic. Arthur, welcome back. Didn't know you were coming back, but here you are. Thanks for coming on. How you doing?
Good. I didn't know I was coming back either, but this is the way things go sometimes. So Kevin Kurz went back to Philly, his hometown. I'm sure he's happy to be there. He was happy to do the Islanders for a couple of years, and here we are back again. It's nice to be back.
So as far as we know, is this going to be a full season thing, splitting time with the Rangers, or is it kind of like a TBD? We'll see what happens.
We're all day to day around here, so
Right.
We'll see how it goes. It's been fun to be back in the room a couple of days so far. Thanks to Lou Lamoriello, a lot of the faces are very familiar, even after a couple of years away. So he's helped me out with that, and just, you know, different environment than being with the Rangers, and it's nice to be able to straddle the line and do both. I hope the fans aren't too upset, but it's nice to be able to dip a toe in both waters, so
Yes.
It's not too bad.
Well, Kevin did a great job, and it's great to have you back as well. So welcome back to the island, so to speak. So let's dive into it. The first question I want to ask you, from what you've been able to see of the Islanders, I guess, through camp and preseason since you came back, is maybe something that you can tell us that maybe the Islander fans can be optimistic about and feeling good about going into the season, and maybe something they should be a little concerned about.
You know, I think the chemistry between Bo Horvat and Matthew Barzal is probably top line. You know, if there's an area that a team that stayed as as similar to last season as it did as the Islanders that they need to improve. Obviously, it's offensively, it's on the power play, it's being able to generate chances. So I think those two developing some chemistry, seeing Barzal the way that he was kind of hounding pucks by the blue line, feeling maybe a little bit freer to kind of act with a very consistent player in the middle and Horvat, take a few more chances maybe without wondering if he's going to, have a guy to pass the puck to, just be a little bit more north-south, go towards the net, not worry about having to play the middle of the ice all the time. I think that's going to help them. I think the search for a third member of that line is still ongoing, but that's probably something I think you'd feel the most optimistic about. And if you're an area of concern, I'd have to think it's how Oliver Wahsltrom looks. Just doesn't seem to be right, whether it's he doesn't trust the knee yet. He doesn't seem like himself. It just feels like we're kind of getting to the end of the options with him. I don't know that there's anything really to be gotten in terms of a trade, or if it ends up almost you can't picture like a Kiefer Bellows type situation where he ends up on waivers or being claimed or just kind of disappearing for nothing. But he's sort of heading in the direction of being a guy who's not in the lineup every night, and that's not going to make him a better player. So it's a little tough to watch right now.
Hey, Arthur, thanks for joining us. Just want to ask you again, you did a story about Barzal, about playing the wing. What is your sense on his confidence level, switching positions?
I never get a sense that his confidence level is anything but sky high, no matter what he's doing. So that part hasn't changed in a couple of years of not being in the room consistently. He just he's a guy who has incredible faith in his abilities. I think maybe the focus on being a guy who makes highlight reel passes has maybe diminished his game a little bit over the years. Operating an offense that doesn't really encourage creativity. They really had to get back to basics when Barry Trotz came in, and it really, it became their calling card of being a team that could beat you 2-1 or 3-2, and it doesn't really reward the highlight reel, viral video type stuff that he could excel in. And he certainly bought in, and I think he always says the right things about wanting to win versus wanting to produce a ton of points and be a little bit less responsible up and down the ice. And I think this switch in terms of his confidence may restore some of that creativity within a structure that there's not as many responsibilities on the wing. He can still be free to play the middle of the ice. I think it's how they read off each other, him and Horvat. And if Horvat is going to be the guy to sacrifice some points to see that Barzal can be as creative as possible or get up the ice and kind of have chance after chance, Horvat seems like the kind of guy who would do that. So, I think it may not end up sacrificing a ton of points. I don't think they're going to score. They're not going to be Draisaitl McDavid level, but I think Barzal's confidence is always pretty high, and I think he's going to be rewarded as a result this season.
Yeah, for sure. That duo is definitely going to have a big magnifying glass on them this season. That's for sure. I want to pivot to the defense a little bit here. It looks like Lane is going to split up that top pair of Pulock and Pelech, and they're going to kind of do a grizzled veteran with a younger guy. What benefit do you think that could bring the team? Do you think that's the right decision for this team?
I think you certainly have the luxury of going back to those two guys if you need to, late in a game, late in a period, whatever. It's almost like like a Crosby Malkin type situation where you've got two guys that work well together, can kind of play that shutdown role when they need to. Have a lot of the other two players have a lot of confidence in them when they're out there together. So, but you really need to see some development at the defensive end from Noah Dobson and from Alexander Romanov. So I think it's the right move to start. It's really predicated on seeing Ron Pulock have a bit of a bounce back and be more of a commanding top pair, a guy who controls a bit more of the play, as opposed to a guy who's maybe reacting a little bit to his better partner, as he did, maybe got lulled into that with Pelech when they were together over the last couple of years, and they maybe diminished a little bit. But I think at least through the preseason, I think you've seen some good things from Romanov. His decision making seems to be a little bit better, not going out of his way to make plays or hits or anything like that. And as far as Dobson's concerned, the guy is, he could be a 55, 60-point guy at the power play, can be a little bit improved, but really the area for this team and what it excels at is he needs to be a lot better in his own end, and playing with Pelech is going to make you better in your own end, you would think. So, he's still a young guy. He's highly touted. He's someone that they need to produce at both ends of the ice and be consistent. He's going to get more minutes playing with Pelech, and you got to start somewhere. So I think it makes sense. And I think having Scott Mayfield kind of be the dedicated anchor in the number 5 spot makes sense too, because you don't want him stretching himself. He's getting a little bit older now. And I think you want him to be that kind of steady number 5, whether it's Aho, whether it's Bolduc. So I think they've got people in the right spots. An injury or some poor play can obviously change that within a week or two, but at least to start, I think they're doing the right thing.
You mentioned Dobson and about how he has to be better defensively. Should there be concern with how he really hasn't taken strides on the defensive side of the puck? Because again, we saw Romanov in the second half last year take exponential strides in this system, and Dobson still seems to make those same mistakes in his own zone year after year.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation for him. It's technically, what is it, year 5 for him? It's really year 4. He just barely played that first year, and I think as far as the system goes, you always want your defenseman up the ice, and he's really the best guy they have at getting up and down the ice. But yeah, you obviously want to see better decisions. It's a calling card of the modern NHL defenseman. You have to make the right reads, especially if you're a guy who relies on your skating and tries to be the 4th guy in the rush. You can't just be making poor, bad coverages or, going behind the net when you need to be out front. And like I said, I think pairing him with Pelech consistently is probably going to help there, at least till it's kind of on the job training. You've got a guy who one of the probably 10 best decision-making defensemen in the league in Pelech, in terms of playing his own end. So you'd hope that it would rub off. You'd hope that after all these years and maybe a consistent pairing of playing 20 to 21 minutes a night, that it's going to work out. And it needs to work out because Dobson can't really take that next step. You could be a 55, 60-point guy, and if you're not the guy that is going to go out there and the first shift of overtime in the playoffs or whatever, then you're not really considered an elite defenseman. So this year, next year, those are important times for Dobson. I'm curious to see how he's learned. He certainly isn't physically imposing. He's not like putting on a ton of weight or anything to kind of be able to throw himself around or shove people out of the way in the defensive zone. So obviously it's going to have to be reads. It's going to have to be decisions. And sometimes that can improve. Defensemen need a little bit longer. He's up to about 350 games. That seems like long enough, I think, to be a smarter defenseman. And I think these first couple of months will tell us a lot about where he's at.
Yeah, no question. And just to bump back to the forwards for a little bit here, I guess the few question marks we have with the lineup is who's ultimately going to take that top left wing spot next to Horvat and Barzal. Looks like Holmstrom is given every chance to have it. We'll see if he has it on Saturday. And then you look at the wingers for JG Pageau. It seems like Anders Lee is going to get that left side spot. Maybe still a little question on who's on the right, whether that's Wahsltrom, who we talked about before, maybe Gauthier, maybe Hudson Fasching, although he potentially is on the men right now. Do you have any thoughts on maybe where that ultimately ends up shaking out and the look that Lane might be looking for?
It is funny to think, for the Islander fans that go back as far as some of us do covering them, when you think back to the days of Jack Capuano putting Corey Conacher up there with John Tavares and Kyle Pozo to start a season, or Matt Olson and Tavares, and then kind of the mystery guy on the other side. It's certainly, I'm sure Islander fans don't want to talk about those dark days, but it does harken back a little bit where if you've got two guys that obviously know what they're doing and know each other inside and out, and then the third guy maybe isn't quite as important to make them succeed, although none of those guys really lasted very long in that top spot. They want Holmstrom to learn. They have a lot invested in him. I'm not so sure I see him as a top 6 guy going forward in his NHL career. Right. But I think it's sort of the best bad option they have. Wahsltrom hasn't really earned a spot there, and I don't know how well he'd mesh with those two guys. You've got Anders Lee kind of in the bullpen waiting. He's done that before. He could probably fill in pretty easily. But I think it's Holmstrom right now. You'd like to think that if it didn't work out, they'd have enough cap space, or the kind of the endless search for a top line wing that they've, it seems like either every in season or off season for the last 15 years they've been trying to find a a solid guy to put with two of their top guys. But I think just the way the other lines slot, you've got a second line that you like in Engvall, Nelson, and Palmieri, and fourth line is what it is. And you got Pajot and whoever on his wings. He can kind of, he can adapt to whoever. I think it's not a bad bet to try Holmstrom for a couple of weeks and see what he can do. He's really got to become more of a shooter and have that mentality of you've got the two most elite guys on the team in terms of, scoring ability and creativity on your, playing on your line. You probably need to be able to bury a few chances. So, he's getting an opportunity. That doesn't mean he's going to be there the whole time, but it's sort of a default setting for right now, I would think.
Okay, well, let's before we let you go, we're talking to Arthur Staple from The Athletic, by the way. Let's get into prediction land a little bit here. Outside of Sorokin, who I think is obviously going to probably be the biggest factor in this for the New York Islanders, who will be the biggest reason the Islanders make or miss the playoffs this season?
For a team that operates so collectively, I'm going to cop out and just say it's going to be their special teams. I think the power play is going to be improved enough that it won't be an embarrassment. If they get up to in the teens, maybe not even in the top half, but just 3 or 4 percentage points, that's probably 5 or 6 points in the standings, and that's enough. That's the difference between missing and making it, really. So I think if you see that, and even the PK, which has been an elite unit, top 10 the last 3 years, if they can even get up to 83, 84% and be lights out with a goalie who, I think is one of the 2 best goalies in the league right now. I think that makes the difference. It makes sense to me in my mind that a collective effort is going to be what gets them in, because it's one of the 2 or 3 teams in the league that is, even though it has some star players on it, it is devoid of they don't operate as a star system basically, and they don't rely on their stars other than the guy in net. Mm-hmm. So, you can try to change some of the personnel, and I think they'll have some better offensive seasons. I could see Barzal posting a 70-point year, maybe a career high in goals. Horvat in the 60s, Noah Dobson, maybe he could get to 60 points. I think an Islander, I was just looking it up, Dennis Potvin was the last Islander defenseman to have 60 points in a year. So it's been a while. But I think it's going to be a collective effort. And, if they're in the hunt for a playoff spot, they'll probably be on the bubble. I don't really see any big trades or big moves barring any injuries, and they're an older group, especially up front. So there could be an injury or two. But I think this is the group, and these are the guys that I think they've decided are going to try to take them where they need to go, or if they don't make it, they don't really have a lot of flexibility because a lot of these guys are signed for a while. So, that kind of pressure, even with guys signed for a long time, becomes to me greater because you can't make a lot of changes without doing anything drastic. So, I think it's going to be special teams and goaltending. Pretty boring coach type speak, but I'm going to go with it.
All right. So with all that in mind, do they get into the playoffs or not? Where do they place in the Metro? And if they do get into the playoffs, how far can they go?
Well, I'm just working on some predictions now. I think I have them 5th. I have them in.
Okay.
Just barely. I think I kind of feel like the Atlantic this year is going to be a little more lopsided than people think. Tampa and Boston to me are really going to struggle. Mm-hmm. So I think the Islanders get in as the 5th team, second wild card. And to me, that means they're playing the first place team in the Atlantic, which is the Leafs, which would be, wow. To me, 2002, for those Islander fans that go back that far, was one of the wildest playoff series. It was the first hockey playoff series I ever covered as an NHL writer. And it was completely bonkers. This will be bonkers for different reasons, obviously. I don't think it's going to be as messy and physical as that one was 22 years ago, but this one will be bizarre. I don't see the Islanders winning it. I think the Leafs are in a pretty good position right now, and I think they're going to get a lot of confidence from being a dominant team in that division. But outside of an Islander Ranger first round, I think that would be the one that a lot of people would look forward to the most, just for the vitriol for John Tavares at UBS in a playoff series would be pretty bonkers. And, I, for one, would look forward to it. I don't think they would win it, but I would still be looking forward to it.
Well, you could sign me up for that. But, Arthur, great to have you back covering the Islanders. Welcome back. And thanks so much for your time tonight. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
You got it, guys. Good to be back. Anytime.
All right, Arthur,
Thanks,
care.
Arthur.
That was Arthur Staple of The Athletic, back covering the Islanders. Double duty for The Athletic, the Islanders and the Rangers. That's going to be interesting to see. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, but he knows his stuff, so it doesn't matter.
He certainly does. It's like he's been covering the team for... Yeah. Well, look, I mean, he was with Newsday covering them. He was covering them on The Athletic for a while.
And he made a really good point. Since he's not covering the team's pretty much stayed the same. So it's not like you got to learn new faces and things like that. You go into the room.
Right. All the numbers are the same for the most part. Yeah,
locker room's the same, you know.
Yes, but nice to have him back. And best of luck to Kevin Kurz covering the Philadelphia Flyers. Yes. So there we have it. I do want to dive into the lineups, but before we do, I want to take one more break. And before we do that, I want to tell everybody about our friends at Main Street Board Game Cafe in Huntington Village on Long Island's North Shore. Games for sale and for open play, food and drink, beer and wine, fun and friends. Bring the magic of phones down, eyes up, tabletop board games to your family. Our staff will help you find the right game from old favorites to the hottest new releases. We have everything from strategic to easy party games. Get off your screens for a night your family will remember. Looking for meetups to join? Our Magic the Gathering, Dungeons & Dragons, Lorcana, and organized play communities are welcoming for all. We also do parties and corporate events located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Go to mainstboardgamecafe.com for more information. Main Street Board Game Cafe. Find your crowd. Unplug your game. So with that, we're going to take a break. I want to thank you all for tuning in here to Hockey Night New York at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. We will return.
New York Islanders fans, Sunday night is Hockey Night in New York. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, tune in to Hockey Night in New York. Catch us live from Floored Media in Rockville Center, Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, as we cover all things Islanders at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. All episodes are also available on YouTube and all your favorite podcast providers. And for all you social butterflies, you can follow at Hockey Night NY on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for all the latest updates. Hockey Night in New York, the best night of the week for any Islanders fan. You have a nice break? Well, it's time to get back on the couch for more Islanders therapy on Hockey Night in New York.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. You are watching and or listening to Hockey Night in New York at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY or your favorite podcast providers. And now, Stefen, we're going to get into the lineup/cap concerns because as of this moment, the Islanders are still over the salary cap, and they obviously need to come under before they can start playing hockey on Saturday. So what's up with that, Stefen? What's going to happen?
Yeah, so in order to be compliant by Monday's 5 p.m. deadline, the Islanders had a couple options. The biggest and probably the one that people thought was most likely was waiving Ross Johnston and his $1.1 million. Whether he gets claimed or goes into the minors, that contract gets buried. Not only would that give the Islanders 23 players on their roster, which is the max, it would also get them under the cap. Right now, they are $574,958 over the cap. The other option was sending Simon Holmstrom down and his $863,000 and change, which would, again, get them under the cap. Now, there's things that could happen now from now until Saturday. Johnson wasn't waived today. He cannot be waived tomorrow because it takes 24 hours. But what can happen, again, this is getting into all the paperwork stuff. The Islanders could send Holmstrom down after practice tomorrow. Waiver exempt, no issue there. Get compliant by the deadline. Season starts Tuesday. They could then waive Johnston later in the week and be compliant and ready to go by Saturday. But or
just keep Holmstrom in Bridgeport.
Yeah, exactly. Or they could keep, or they could go a 22-man roster, which you're seeing a lot of teams do because that's more cap that you could accrue heading into the deadline and things like that. So a lot of math and stuff that is way over my head, but there's things that can be done. Except, again, the biggest thing was Johnston saves the Islanders more money if he gets waived or sent down, and we know how much cap space is important.
Yeah, and this is a hot topic
among
Islander fans. One, I don't think there's any chance to go with a 22-man roster. That is not happening. They like to have their extra bodies there, and Ross Johnston being one of them is a guy that they've liked to have there for a very long time. And as you noted, and as I'm sure a lot of people are sitting here listening right now and saying, yeah, what the hell is going on with that guy? And I get it. And I talked a little bit about this on Twitter a little bit with my buddy Ryan. He had some passionate things to say about it. But listen, I know, I get it from the outside looking in that everybody's like, Johnston barely plays. When he does, he plays a very limited role. He gets out there for maybe 4 to 5 minutes, polices the ice a little bit. Maybe he gets into a scrap. And yet, year after year, he's still here taking that $1.1 million in cap, where this is probably maybe the first time where it's really, we've hit a point where it's like, oh, we might actually have to move this. The Islanders may actually have to move this money so that they can have the most ideal squad possible up in that 23-man roster, right? This may finally be the time where you look at Ross Johnson and be like, hey, good soldier, you've been here, we like you being here, but that 1.1 mil now is actually causing a bit of an issue because we have player A and player B that we want sticking around. And that ultimately could end up happening. But as we've also seen, this man has been immune to moving up and down the roster or, the system ever since he's came in. And there's obviously a reason for that. And there may be plenty of you out there that are sitting there like, I don't care what the reason is, I'm not going to agree with it. And that's all well and good. And that could be simply because they just want a guy for, police insurance, right? If they're playing a certain team, they want to be able to have him there to get in the lineup to kind of put the fear of God into some players there, just to make sure that nobody's taking liberties on their players. Maybe that's the reason. Another reason is he might just be a great damn guy in the locker room. He's probably both, honestly. And you might be sitting there saying, okay, well, what the hell is that worth? But the thing is
it's worth a lot.
It's worth a lot. There's locker room dynamics. There's reasons why Matt Martin and Cal Clutterbuck are still on this team.
Yeah.
And that's not even me saying they're done and they're toast and they can't play anymore. But those are two huge guys. There's a reason why Cal Clutterbuck's been wearing an A now for a little while, because, yes, what we're seeing is happening on the ice, and that is ultimately the most important thing, how they perform, whether they're putting goals in the net and whether they're winning hockey games. Absolutely, no question about it. But there's a whole element outside of that we're not privy to, the viewer, right? Stefen has a little bit more of a view into that than we do, and then you have the coaching staff, you have the management staff, and they have very specific reasons why they keep these guys there. And you might still be saying, well, I don't buy it or I don't care. But there's a reason why certain players, even looking back at like Leo Komarov, right? Like how long were fans saying Komarov's got to go? What's he doing here? But he's another guy that they felt was valuable enough to be in that locker room, whether he was playing 5 minutes, 15 minutes, or whatever the case may be. And I think this is another case of that where Ross Johnson helps keep the glue of this team together. Now, is he as important as Matt Barzal or Ilya Sorokin? Clearly he's not, because I think, he played 16 games last season or whatever it is. But there's certain guys that help keep the mentality of a locker room in place and where it needs to be, because it's not just how you're playing on the ice, but it's also mental too. And I know I'm getting into this whole psychological aspect of the game,
but you make a great point.
But it's important and it's a real thing. Now, it's up to Lane Lambert and Lou Lamoriello to decide how much that's going to factor in when it comes to a guy like Ross Johnson, and if he belongs, or if it's worth bumping somebody else off the squad to keep him there. We're going to find out within this week whether that happens or not. But I'm just trying to give a little benefit of the doubt to those guys, and maybe just a little peek into why they may or may not be keeping a guy like him around, because I don't know. I'm not in the locker room. But Lou Lamoriello and even Barry Trotz before Lane, because he's a guy who kept Johnson around too. Yeah. There's a reason why those guys wanted him to stick around. We don't know exactly what that is, but they have their reasons. And I think, all of those guys, particularly Lou and Barry, have built up enough clout in the NHL to be given the benefit of the doubt as to why they're keeping a guy like that around. So now to wrap up my rant on Ross Johnson.
You sure? You ready?
And why he's still here, I think the easiest thing for them to do as far as this cap compliance thing goes is to just send Holmstrom down and then see what happens within this week. Maybe a guy tweaks something, during this week of practicing that they're doing, right? And maybe there's a way to do an IR thing where a guy ends up on IR, and maybe there's another way to open up salary cap space. I'm very curious to see where this all goes. But ultimately, for me, the easiest thing is, especially now that we're past that waiver point, it's probably just going to be Holmstrom, at least for now, being sent down.
No, I agree. And I think, again, going back to the Johnson point, I am in the room. Again, I'm not going out and partying with these guys to really know exactly what's happening, but he is
not there for the meetings.
He is beloved in that room. I mean, everybody loves him. And you have to remember, too, is the extra skaters hold a tremendous amount of value. They're on the ice later with the goalies, working with the backups, doing extra drills. I think, too, if they do waive Johnston, he has so much value in the organization, because the Islanders' prospect pool now, there's a lot of young guys that are trying to make a name for themselves in Bridgeport and need protection. The Islanders' Bridgeport team lost a couple of veterans this summer. We had Chris Terry on. You're losing veteran mentorship and guys down there. So having Johnson down there, if he does get waived and does report, which I think he would, that's a huge. I mean, Johnson and Fashing practice with the AHL squad a couple of days ago into the last couple of days of camp, and I asked a couple of the prospects, and they said it was awesome having him out there. You could learn a lot from guys, even if they don't play. I mean, Johnson was in the press box a lot, obviously. So much value. Again, he's not a rookie. He's been around. He knows what it takes. Again, he doesn't have the skill to be a top 6 guy in this league or play every day, but tremendous value. Again, the players love him, and that's why, again, this group has stayed the same for so long. There's so much value with each guy in that room.
Yeah, and I'm going to play devil's advocate with Wahsltrom here. I mean, Arthur just had some skepticism about him being on the top line, right? We've already expressed skepticism about Wahsltrom being on the top line. And if he doesn't slot in anywhere else, like let's say the only other spot he could possibly play is on Pajot's wing on the third line, right? Then, is he going to get that spot over Hudson Fasching or Gauthier? And is that going to be a good spot for him to be for the remainder of the season? Whereas it may just make the most sense if Lane doesn't think that Holmstrom's going to work on the top line. It may just make more sense to send him down to Bridgeport, get him top line minutes down there, get his confidence up. You solve the cap issue. And then you can still have Ross Johnson as your 22nd, 23rd man. You probably have Gauthier as the other extra guy, and you figure the rest of the lineup from there. And I guess we can jump into that now. But the easiest solution for the cap for me, I think, is just Holmstrom going down, unless like he really convinces Lane Lambert that he belongs in that spot where he is right now.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head. My mindset is if he is not your left wing, your first line left winger or right wing, whatever they do. I know Barzal and Holmstrom switched sides last game. Then you have guys that play bottom 6 roles much better. And let him go down to Bridgeport where he got a taste. 50 games in the NHL. He got a taste of what it takes to be here. Let him go down and earn it.
Sure.
All he's got to do, really, he plays the defense. He could skate. He's just got to find a way to hit the net. Because if Barzal's setting you up left and right, again, you don't have to score. We talked about this numerous times. Rebounds. You have big body Horvat. You have Barzal who's got the skill. If you don't hit the net, you don't have options for rebounds or anything like that. So hitting the net is the biggest thing. I talked to Kowalski about it during development camp. And he said that was the biggest issue for Holmstrom on the power play and 5-on-5 in Bridgeport is doesn't hit the net enough. And you need that if you're playing with guys that are going to set you up left and right. But I guess we can get to the lineup, right?
Yeah, so we know that the D is pretty much set. We know we have our 7. We know that they already trimmed that out. There's no mystery left with what 7 guys are going to be playing D for the Islanders. I guess the real question is twofold. Is Aho hanging on to the bottom pairing, which it looks like he is, at least to start? And are they going to stick with that splitting of Pelech and Pulock, or are they going to try Pelech with Dobson, and they're going to try Romanov with Pulock? I think that they are. It looks that way. I have no problem with that. Let's see where it goes. So the defense is pretty easy unless you have something else to add there.
What I would add is I think the organization wanted to see Bolduc in his second year coming up, really take the chance to be that 6th guy and run away with it. And I'm not saying Aho played so much better than Bolduc, but Bolduc just underwhelmed in preseason. He looked like what he looked like in the second half last year and in the playoffs, which again, confidence is a big thing. He needs reps. And I think, again, people may say, you had Salo, send Bolduc down, let Salo play up here, let Bolduc play every day. Bolduc's not waiver exempt. You run the risk of a second-round pick and put on waivers. Again, maybe if he goes down where everyone went down the other day, maybe people don't pick him up, but that's a risk the Islanders probably don't want to take. So he's going to be here. He's going to be your 7th guy probably to start the year, and he's going to practice, and that's valuable too. But when he gets into a game, Lambert's got to have trust in him, or that bottom pairing is not going to play a lot.
Yeah, for sure. So we can move on to the forwards, and we hinted at this before. It looks like the real question that needs to be answered is where does certain puzzle pieces fit in, right? Like where is Hudson Fasching going to be, assuming that he's healthy? It looks like Palmieri's back. He's going to be in the lineup. Is he going to slot in on the second line where he was with Nelson and Pierre Engvall? Is Engvall going to be healthy? Because he was a little dinged up too, right?
Fasching, Engvall, we're being told day-to-day maintenance. We asked Lambert if he was worried about both of them. He said not at all.
Okay.
Again, we're not doctors. We have no idea what even happened because maintenance doesn't tell us upper or lower. So the thought right now is that they will be ready, and we'll keep you updated throughout the week if things change.
Yeah, so I think it's just where some of these guys fit in. I think we're going to see Lee and Pajot together. Who's going to be the right winger, right? Is that going to be Fasching, Gauthier, perhaps Holmstrom, perhaps Wahsltrom? Then the top line, is Holmstrom going to stick there on the top there? Are they going to give Wahsltrom a shot yet? Doesn't look like it. I don't think so. And, do they maybe break up that second line from last year, which I know we're going to talk a little bit more about? Maybe Palmieri getting a shot up there, maybe Engvall if he ends up being healthy. And, the way I look at it, at least for who's going to be in the lineup to start the first game, as far as there or being in the press box, I think Gauthier is your extra forward. I do think Johnson will be the second extra forward, and then the rest of it's going to play out like it's just a matter of who ends up where. I mean, there's still an issue just figuring out who's on the right wing of Pajot and Lee, depending on Fasching and depending on Wahsltrom, you know what I mean? And then who ends up at the top. So where do you see all that going?
Yeah, so I'll start with my scratches. I disagree with you. Again, not saying you're wrong.
Sure.
Based on Lambert's quote the other day about Wahsltrom saying that he needed to catch up to the pace, not quite there yet, and when he gets that opportunity to get in, we'll see where he's at. That hinted to me that if he doesn't have a great week this week, he's going to be an extra. And again, I don't think that's a terrible thing. If there's guys that are 100% ready to go,
right,
you need to kind of rely on that. So I do think that Wallstrom's not going to start just for the fact that they need him to be effective if he's out there. And if he's not going to be effective, again, strong starts are huge for this team, especially in this division. I'd rather see someone like a Gauthier who I thought really earned it. So Johnson and Wallstrom are my extras. Now, the way I look at this is you don't want to break up the Engvall-Nelson Palmieri line, but if they do have to send Holmstrom down, I do think that you need to see Palmieri up there. Again, we know Barzal could play left wing. You could put Palmieri on the right or the left, but I just think Palmieri does everything that Lambert wants. The other day, I asked Lambert, what are you looking for from that line? You don't need an elite guy. One, you don't have him, but two, you don't need an elite guy, and I think you need a big body that can skate, drive the net, win pucks in corners, and then when he gets the shot, hit the net and score. And I think Palmieri plays the defense, can skate. When healthy, he's crashing the net. Also, I think he has the best long-distance shot on the team. So I think he fits so perfect there. And again, Nelson and Engvall, to me, are a duo that you shouldn't break up. If you're going to break up the other side, sure. But they've showed so much chemistry last year, of course, but in preseason, they've shown a ton. I think Gauthier in that line, two big guys on Nelson's wings who have speed, who are smart, who could transition the puck. That line, just from a physical standpoint, how big these guys are, it's going to be so difficult to defend. I think that line could work really well. And again, Palmieri being up there, I think it makes it more balanced rather than a Holmstrom who, again, if he doesn't hit the net, those are key opportunities off the table. And you don't want to see Nelson's line have to be that line again. Because Horvat and Barzal should be able to produce on their own. You don't need that third guy to be the goal scorer. But when there are chances to be had, need the shots on net. I think Palmieri brings that the most. Looking at my third line, again, Wallstrom not being involved, I think it's Lee, Pageau, and I think it's Fasching. This was a guy last year who forced himself into the lineup, and then when people were healthy, remained in the lineup. And if he's ready to go, we saw that he's able to change his game based on who he plays with. We saw it in that preseason game with Nelson. The offense, the key plays in the offensive zone he made to Nelson, they looked great together. But again, if he's on the shutdown defense line with Lee and Pageau, he's very responsible in his own zone. He has the IQ, has the positioning. I think that line can flourish, and then you have your fourth line. And again, things may change based on how well the fourth line does or just health. But I think for Fasching, the best place for him is on the third line with Pageau and Lee.
Yeah, I think you got a pretty good lineup going there. I think I'm probably being more hopeful than anything that Wallstrom gets into that opening night roster.
And you want him to, right?
Yeah, no, listen, yes, because if he's not eventually there, then there's an issue, right? He's a guy that they kind of want and need to pan out. But for all the reasons that you laid out and for what Arthur said earlier, there's probably a decent chance that Wallstrom sits on Saturday, assuming everybody's healthy, right? And maybe he needs a little more time. And maybe Lane's like, look, Fasching, he's ready to go. He's looked good in preseason, and he can bring me a little more of that defensive side of things. He can play the PK, all that. They're probably not putting Oliver Wallstrom on the PK, right? So he might just have a more defined role right now until they figure out what the hell Wallstrom is going to bring to the table. Gauthier, sure, he could potentially work on that second line. I could see that happening. I mean, the thing is, they have guys that are options that they can rotate. They can get looks with these guys, see what works. Yeah, I mean, look, it doesn't mean whatever we see on Saturday that means that has to be what it's going to be going forward, and that it's going to be, because we know that it's not, whether it's injuries or whether somebody isn't pulling their weight. But they do have guys that can kind of utility throughout the lineup, and you can kind of try to plug them in different spots and see how they work. But I mean, we're pretty close. We're close to being on the same page here.
I mean, you mentioned the versatility. I think when Zach Preseason, when he found out he wasn't coming back, or maybe he's coming back in the future, if it's like nobody replaced Parise, right?
Right.
But I think you've seen with the Gauthier signing where he could play pretty much on any line and bring that IQ. And you have Fasching, who you say could play in the PK. He's played in the net front of the power play. You kind of have players that, again, no one can replace exactly what Parise brings. He played everywhere, up and down the lineup, the work ethic. But having Fasching, Engvall, Gauthier, those three together could really be those versatile options for Lambert that maybe you didn't think you had when you lost Parise.
I think the biggest question with Parise, aside from his work ethic, which we all love to highlight and note, is where's the 20 goals coming from?
Yeah.
That's 20 goals that are being removed from the lineup, and is it going to be goals by committee, or is it going to be a guy who steps in here, whether it's Engvall or otherwise, and says, I'm going to be that 20 goal scorer now?
And you look at,
that's what we're waiting for.
And you look at, again, Horvat's I mean, he can't struggle as much as he did there. That should help with the goal total. Barzal should have more goals than he's had. And again, the biggest question mark with Gauthier being in the lineup is the same thing with Holmstrom. When he gets the chance, can he score? Because that's the reason Gauthier has bounced around, is because he's pretty much been Michael Grabner, where all speed, gets those huge chances, breakaway chances from the outside. He just struggles to find it. But this camp so far, Gauthier has not only hit the net, he's scored, and they've been lasers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a huge confidence boost for him if he gets into the starting lineup. And if he could hit the net and score, 10, 11, 12 goals, that's a plus.
Well, ultimately, I think that this lineup on day one, game one, is a little better than what we saw day one, game one last year.
Yeah.
We'll see if they prove that on the score sheet. But I do think that there's some positives to look at as this team is heading into game one against the Buffalo Sabres. I think we'll take one more break here, get ourselves settled. I know we're running a little late here, but we still got to do What's on Tap. We got to do Hero. We got to do Questions. So we're going to break real quick, and we're going to rapid fire through all that stuff. So, folks, once again, thank you so much for tuning in to twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY, and your favorite podcast providers. We'll be right back.
And now, it's time for What's on Tap, a look ahead at the Islanders' upcoming schedule.
That's right. It's time for What's on Tap, a look ahead at the Islanders' upcoming schedule. And a lot of rest between now and next weekend, a lot of practice, and only one game that is Saturday, opening night, home opener as well, at the wonderful, the glorious UBS Arena, Saturday, October 14th. That's a 7 p.m. puck drop?
It is a 7 p.m. puck drop.
So playing a team that the Islanders are probably going to be neck and neck with for a playoff spot. I believe the Sabres are only 2 points behind them when all was said and done last year, and everybody's expecting an improvement for them this season. So already kind of a big game if you're looking ahead to April.
And if you want to look at this matchup specifically, last year, the Islanders, specifically Hudson Fasching's knee, kind of ended the Sabres' chances of making the playoffs. If you remember,
that's right.
That game against the Sabres was a game where the Sabres end up losing, and they missed the playoffs. So I think this is, again, you're looking at a small play, but Buffalo Sabre fans, don't forget that. They've mentioned that. I've seen that over the summer when they announced what this game was going to be, the home opener and season opener. So, yeah, this Sabres team is so talented. Thompson, I mean, that guy is incredible.
He's pretty good.
And then you have just Kyle Oposo being the leader there still for another year. He's back.
Yeah. And
goaltending, we'll see what happens if Levi's in there, a young, promising guy. I'm not sure if he's going to start, but this is a Sabres team that you're expecting to make the playoffs this year. And the Islanders can't take any team lightly. We saw them lose to Arizona twice last year. And those are points against the weaker teams that you can't give up. But if the Islanders want to finish ahead of Buffalo, one, it's starting off strong, and two, it's beating teams like Buffalo to really give you the confidence that, okay, maybe we didn't have the best preseason. We had a week off, but now's the time.
No question. I think it would be very disappointing if the Islanders come out flat in that game. They get a week off. You get guys like Engvall and Fasching resting here for that week. You'd like to think they're ready to go if Lane has at least Fasching slotted into the lineup. And you're at home. You're in front of your home crowd. It's the season opener. It's going to be packed. There's going to be a lot of energy. The fans are going to be ready. You got to come out flying. You got to come out quick against that team and use that veteran experience that the Islanders have compared to the Buffalo Sabres and show them that the 2 points are theirs, you know?
You mentioned it. They cannot come out flat. One, that was a huge issue last year. I remember I asked Lou at the first or the end of the year presser, and I said, what do you guys do to fix that? And he pretty much said, if you have any answers, let me know. But again, a week off, they're going to be antsy to get going.
Yeah.
And there's you would think they're going to come out flying. And I know we've said they should be coming out flying, right? That should never be an issue for an NHL team. But this is a team that's going to be waiting a while to prove that, hey, we're coming into the season as underdogs. Everyone knows that. They don't mind that. They would actually relish that. But that first period, maybe they lose that game, right? But the reason they lose that game can't be because the first 10 minutes they allow 3 goals because they weren't ready to go.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point. That was a big issue last season. That's something they definitely have to keep an eye on and improve upon. And do you happen to know if the Sabres have a game going into that?
I should know. I do not know. I do not know. I'm gonna think they probably do, but that's just terrible on my part. I apologize. Let's cut that.
Jeez, dude.
Can we cut that part?
No, we're gonna highlight that part. That's gonna be a clip.
That's gonna be a clip for. You guys got a computer? Look it up.
Wow.
They do. When do they play? And then they play Saturday?
Oh, yeah, that's right. That makes sense.
They would go
I knew
into
that.
I knew that, yeah.
You can't go back on it.
Yeah, Jake, you want to switch seats here? Jake,
Yeah, Jake filling in for Jay tonight on the board. Yeah, how you doing there, buddy? He's feeling good. He's feeling good.
On top of that, then, if Buffalo loses that game, they're going to come out pretty pissed off to play the Islanders. And if they do win that game, that's huge confidence on their part. So the Islanders will have their hands full for sure.
There is no question about it. And that's it for What's on Tap. A long break and then the season opener. So we're almost there, though. We are less than a week away from real Islander hockey. Are you excited? Ed's excited.
Yeah, can you not see it on my face?
I don't know. I'm not really convinced. We'll check in on that later. All right, so that's just for What's on Tap. Why don't we get into the Hero of the Week? That's right, folks. When you hear this song, that means it's time for the Hero of the Week, brought to you by none other than the Blue Line Deli and Bagels half-price hero, which this week is to open the season, the Hockey Night in New York, featuring grilled chicken, buffalo sauce, mozzarella cheese, avocado in a sweet, delicious wrap. And we're changing the formula a little bit here on the Hero of the Week. We're not looking at a hero from this past week because, quite frankly, there really weren't any.
Saturday.
But we're going to look ahead to this season and key on a guy who either will be or should be a hero for the Islanders if they are to have either the success or build on the success that they had last season. So, Stefen, I go to you first. Who is your hopeful hero of the season?
Yeah, I think it's Kyle Palmieri. Listen, we know the first couple years of his Islanders tenure didn't go as planned because he was hurt. And then he wasn't consistent, and the Islanders need him to be consistent. You look at the 2 head injuries last year. He comes back in the second half. Besides Nelson carrying the offense, Palmieri was critical and such a vital piece of that line when he comes back. And when Engvall got there, I mean, that line carried them into the playoffs, essentially. And in the playoffs, Palmieri was tied with 5 points with Nelson for the team lead. And I think you look at what Palmieri brings. Goal scorer for sure. He's your, net front guy on the top power play unit, as it seems. It seems like Lee's going to be on that second unit. So, again, we talked about how important the power play is. We know how important that line's going to be. But people forget how good defensively Palmieri is.
Yeah.
And I think you talk about defensive structure. You talk about forwards getting back, which I think was an issue last year in terms of the communication between the forwards and the D. And Palmieri, when healthy, can bring all of that. And it sounds like he's going to be ready for opening night. And again, for him, it's just staying on the ice because in the first half last year, he averaged 0.6 goals per game, 16 goals in 55 games. He comes back. The final 34 games, he had 10 goals, 0.71 points per game. I know that doesn't look like a lot on paper, but in the games, Palmieri being back is just another threat that the opposition has to deal with. And if he is playing with Nelson and Engvall, we just talked about it. Who is the defense going to have to guard? Nelson's got a lethal shot. Engvall can drive the play and he's tall and he can win battles and get to the outside. And then you have Palmieri where if you leave him open, he has the ability to snipe on every shot he takes. And I think him finally coming through for the Islanders on this contract, which we haven't seen a full year of him, if he could stay healthy, I mean, he is critical. Because, again, you want to see Horvat and Barzal carry the offense, but Nelson shouldn't be the only guy on that line putting goals in the net.
That's the question, though, right there. Can we get a healthy season out of Kyle Palmieri? And now, I'm not saying that like it's his fault. Like, he's not going out there and trying to get himself hurt.
That was a huge hit by Riley that he came back definitely way too early from. And
it would be nice to get at least closer to 82 games out of this guy because for all the reasons you just listed, that is going to help the Islanders tremendously defensively and just with more points on the board. And whether that's lining up on the line we perhaps expect him to be on line 2 or maybe getting a shot on that top line on the left wing with Barzal and Horvat, which I'm kind of hoping to see. But, a full year out of Palmieri would be great because, he can be a performer for this team. He's proven to be a performer in the playoffs as well. And I think he's a good pick. I think, he could end up being a real deciding factor in the success of the Islanders this year.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we'll move on to me now. So I'm moving on to a guy whose name everybody is very familiar with. It's not Ilya Sorokin because that's kind of obvious, right? The season's always going to rest on his shoulders. But I'm going to go with number 13, Matt Barzal. It seems like he has, but he's definitely got to embrace that role as a wing as opposed to being a center. But not only embrace it, but he's actually got to perform in it. And we're finally going to see a full season, it seems, of him being a winger on the side of Bo Horvat. And I think this is something we need to see. They obviously have to click there. But this is a guy who has been expected to kind of be the offensive leader for this team, and he hasn't established that yet in the sense that you've had a great support group and guys like Brock Nelson and whatnot. And I think him as a winger now next to Bo Horvat, it's time to see if Matt Barzal can kind of up his game as the forward leader of this team. And as Arthur kind of mentioned before, this is a real opportunity for Barzal to up his goal total and maybe be one of those guys in that like 25, 30 goal range if he's going to be getting fed a couple more pucks coming from Bo Horvat and stuff like that. But I think this is the year that Barzal really has to step up and establish himself as that first guy. His first season you had, Tavares was still there and whatnot. And he obviously, that was his best point producing year. But, let's see him kind of, take the ball and run with it. He's finally has a steady running mate here in Bo Horvat, regardless of who that third guy ends up being. This is a top 6 caliber guy that you hope that Barzal is going to be able to mesh with, and he can become that, top guy in this team. So let's finally see him be a leader on the score sheet and hopefully lead this team offensively, 5-on-5 and on the power play.
And again, it's confidence in his shot. Horvat spoke about it. He's just got to keep shooting. We saw in the preseason so far and in the scrimmages at Northwell at their practice facility, he has the confidence of the shot. It is a lethal shot when he shoots it. And who really cares who's leading the team in goals on that line, right?
Sure.
We talked about how much, Horvat's got to score 40. Horvat's got to do this and that.
No.
If the Islanders are winning and Horvat's the playmaker on that line and Barzal's potting 30, it doesn't really matter as long as those two get it done.
If that happens, then all of a sudden we know Matt Barzal can be a key goal scorer on the New York Islanders because he doesn't have to just be relied upon to be a setup man. I hope his goal numbers go up, as a result of this. Does it matter whether it's one guy feeding the other? No, as long as the points come and the wins come, but that would be fantastic.
And him playing the wing, you play hockey, I play hockey. A lot of people that watch, love hockey and play, and him being on the wing changes everything for his ability off the rush. Now, we talked about him playing center, and the center's usually deeper in the defensive zone. But like Arthur mentioned, there's pucks that get bobbled at the blue line. In the past, Barzal's not up there to make that play and get on breakaways.
Yes.
Now, you saw it in the preseason game against, I think it was the Devils, where puck bobbled at the line, Barzal gets on the breakaway.
Last year, too.
Yeah, and that changes everything. One, he doesn't have to worry about playing as much defense, and two, breakaways, odd man rushes. You get an odd man rush with Barzal, and now he has the confidence to shoot it rather than pass. Because again, defenders defending the odd man rush when Barzal has the puck pretty much knew that he wasn't shooting it, so they just got to defend the pass. Now, if he gets off to a hot start where he is potting those goals, not only does that mean he's probably going to score more, the defense now has to respect the shot, which opens up the backdoor play. Right. And we know that Horvat has the ability to bury that or whoever's on that line. So him playing on the wing and gaining confidence early in that shot changes the dynamic of that line completely.
No, agreed. I actually really like the prospect of what Barzal on the wing could bring here because of that breakaway speed that he has. And I do think we're going to see a significant amount of breakaways from him because he does play good defensively as well, where you can see him when he pressures the point man, he can strip the puck away, and then he's off to the races. And he has that speed too. And now we just got to find out if he can finish. And I think he will.
One more add too is you're seeing the confidence in the shot because he's not deking on the breakaways. He's just shooting. And that means he's confident in his shot because people that deke all the time,
he's got a great shot.
They don't trust that shot from the low slot because they think they have a better chance at deking.
Right.
And again, that's a different thing too. If he starts scoring, the goalie now has to respect the shot, which means if he fakes the shot, now that deke's going to be open, where in the past, the goalie's expecting the deke. So they're not worried about that initial shot. They can try to guess and anticipate where Barzal is going to go. They can't do that if he's scoring from the low slot on a shot.
Yeah, I'm excited to see this, Bo Horvat at center, Matt Barzal at the wing experiment, go full time here in the season. So that's my guy, Matt Barzal. We all know he's a hero on the team already, but I think this is the year he's got to step up and, on Bo Horvat's wing and really, prove himself on the offensive side and lead this team. So there you have it, folks. That is the hero of the week. Stop on in to the Blue Line Deli and Bagels Huntington location for half off the Hockey Night in New York wrap. And now we go to Questions Brewing, my favorite segment of the show.
It's time for Questions Brewing. So go ahead. Ask us a question.
So go ahead. Ask us a question. Ed, body by Jake. Jake, not from State Farm. Jake the Steak Rosdanis. How we doing, fellas?
We're doing great, actually.
How's the chat? Are we active? Do we have questions?
We're active.
We like that.
We are. I mean, there's a lot of... Before you guys brought up Bridgeport, bringing guys down, everyone was talking about who they could see in Bridgeport. A lot of Josh Bailey discussions.
Interesting.
You didn't mention that. He gets released from his PTO. Another thing, too, is Odelius, who said at the start of camp that he was going back to Europe. I spoke to him the other day, and he said, it's not a guarantee he was going back. Today, he was sent back to juniors. Don't think it's a terrible idea. They didn't play him a lot on his team, so hopefully he gets more minutes, but he'll come over after this season. But yeah, Josh Bailey released from his PTO. 1 goal and 5 assists in 6 games. But
that's rough, huh? 6 points in 6 games, and he's still out.
And he wore an A, but one of the Senators reporters said he just could not keep up the pace, which again was an issue on the island. So we wish, obviously, Josh nothing but the best, and hopefully he lands somewhere, and if not, and he doesn't end up retiring, I mean, listen, he got shelled for a long time, but he had a great career. He stayed with the Islanders when other people left, so you have to give him credit there.
Yeah, I think if he doesn't pursue playing hockey elsewhere, whether that's in another league, AHL, or overseas, I don't think he's looking to uplift his life in that way.
Yeah.
And if he decides to hang up his skates, I would think that there would be a job waiting for him
100%.
in the
Player
Islanders
development.
organization. So we'll see where that all goes, but. One way or another, best of luck to Josh Bailey if indeed this is the end of his hockey playing career. So with that, Ed, throw some questions at us. What do we got?
We're starting off with none other than Mr. Tom Boyle.
T-Boyle, let's go.
Great question. When is the first viewing party, and will you be at Blue Line this Saturday?
Wow. Lovely question, and that is TBD. We will be doing viewing parties again this season, but we are still working behind the scenes to get the particulars of that sorted out. But definitely stay tuned to our socials. Stay tuned to us here on the show. When we have some viewing party information, we will pass that along. And I will not be at Blue Line this weekend because I will be away. But I can't speak for Stefen. You going to Blue Line, buddy? You going to get a Sammy?
I will be at morning skate.
You gotta do your
if
job.
I do have the time, do my job. If I do have the time, I'd love to stop by. Now I want to.
Well, buddy, I mean, they're open at 5 a.m., man. So just go in a little early. Get up a little early. And
Next question, but I love Blue Line Deli. I mean, sandwiches are great.
Either way, you should all get over there because Donnie's going to have a lot of things going on, as I talked about at the top of the show. Jersey giveaways, ticket giveaways, bagel giveaways, all the good stuff. So stop on over there. Ed, what do you got?
Next up from NZAB09. Has the trade for Palmieri really been a plus for the Islanders?
Has the trade from first off, in those playoffs after they made the trade, he was pretty good early. Obviously, he scored against the Penguins, and he did pretty well. Yeah, the last couple of years have been pretty tough. Again, we just talked about it with the injuries. But that being said, we saw what he did in the second half, how important he was. I'm not sure the Islanders make the playoffs if he's not healthy in the second half. And then in the playoffs, again, they didn't win the series, but if they had beaten Carolina, you look at that line and said that's the reason why. They were their best line. So I think talking about
still work in progress.
I think you can't judge a contract until it's over. Because if let's say he doesn't do well this year, but the Islanders go on a deep run in the playoffs, who knows, they win a cup at the end of the tenure. He was part of the team that won, therefore it is a win. And again, anytime you can move a pick, especially at the deadline, and get back a bona fide NHLer, it's a win-win. And again, maybe that prospect turned into something, but at the end of the day, Palmieri's been a major piece of this team last year in the second half, and if he could do it again this year, he's going to really help this team.
Yeah, I think the jury's still out.
Yeah.
And, if he ends up with either injury trouble again or if he has a hard time putting pucks in the net, because we also have seen he's had some slow first halves to the season when he's been healthy, then the dial kind of starts moving towards them. Maybe it wasn't so great, but I think it's still fluttering in the middle somewhere, and we still got to wait to see what happens. Good question.
So next up, we go to Trottier19.
Hello, Trots.
Wait, where did I go? Oh,
are you lying to me?
No, it's from him. Oh, no, here it is. There was two, right next to each other. Since New York Islanders is the home team for the outdoor game in February, do they get all the revenue for that game, or is there a split? If so, what?
Do you have any insight on that? Because I don't.
I would assume it's a split. I mean, I would think so.
Well, I'm sure the league gets a large chunk of it.
Yeah,
and
the home team should probably get more of it, but I don't know.
No idea.
It's above my pay grade.
What the dynamic is. And,
it's a lot of money, probably.
It's an interesting question.
It is a good question.
Probably
do not
5%,
know.
if anything.
Yeah, I don't know.
5% more.
The answer is
amount.
we have no flipping clue.
They'll get paid millions. Next up from Blackwin. Was hoping for a better preseason showing out of Wally, considering the lack of the roster spots. Do you think this show me contract could be a detriment for him, as in he'll maybe trying to do too much?
I think, the onus is on him either way to figure it out, and it's not really like Lou Lamoriello's not going into that contract negotiation saying, oh, if I don't give him a longer contract, it's gonna mess with him mentally and he's not gonna perform well. Like he hasn't shown enough to this point, whether it's by way of his own play or by the unfortunate luck of the injury last season, where he just hasn't shown enough where he deserves a long-term stable contract with this team. The good news is for the Islanders is he's still Islander property at the end of this contract, and they can decide what they want to do based on the body of work that he shows this season. But look, he's, as Stefen has noted, through Twitter and through his spaces here, Wahsltrom is saying all the right things.
Yep.
He's definitely saying all the right things. He's talking the talk. Now he has to walk the walk. And he has
skate
to
the skate.
Skate the skate. I like that. But he has to be given the opportunity to do so from Lane, so he has to get into the lineup. So it's like chicken before the egg. He has to earn it, and then he has to, earn the right to stay there, and Lane also has to give it to him. So again, a little tricky for how the coaching staff is going to go with that. But ultimately, like, this is Wahsltrom's time to shine. He's got to be able to figure it out. You know what I mean? Like, tough love, call it whatever it is, but he's got to figure it out. He's got to believe in himself. He's got to take advantage of the opportunities he does get in the lineup and give Lane no reason to take him back out when he gets in there. And hopefully he not only is of the right state of mind on the ice, but also his body, his knee allows him to do that.
Yeah, and I spoke to Wahsltrom about why he signed his qualifying offer, why it wasn't a multi-year deal. And he said essentially that it sucked he didn't get a multi-year deal. I thought the Islanders would go that route. God forbid he exploded this year, right, and scores 30 goals or whatever the case may be. They have him locked up short-term, 2 to 3 year deal. And again, he would ask for more. But outside of that, he said he had no leverage, essentially. And he's not wrong. He had no leverage. The Islanders said, listen, maybe you were on a path for a career year. You got hurt. So now you really got to prove it. And I think for Wahsltrom, he's saying all the right things. Like you said, he's got so much confidence. But it is a contract year for him. And if he wants to gain the respect, not from his teammates or anything, but in the NHL where, hey, I want a contract similar to this guy who did that, he's got to show up this year. And he's got to be a guy that's a top 6 guy. Because like we said before, same thing with Holmstrom. He's not going to prove to be a top 6 guy. There are too many guys that the Islanders have that play a bottom 6 role much better. And I think for Wahsltrom, that's what it's going to be this year is, 10 goals if he gets in isn't enough. 20 goals at the minimum should be what Wahslstrom's doing when he's healthy. And I think, again, he's got to get the chance to do that for sure. But if he doesn't get chances in the top 6 and he is playing bottom 6, whatever line he's on, he's got to lead the offensive rushes there.
From the Islanders' perspective, this is the perfect contract to give Albert Wahsltrom because they want that problem at the end of this year.
Yeah.
They want him to score 35 goals this year so they can be like, all right, let's talk 7 figures now.
Yeah.
Let's talk some money now. Like yeah, I mean, is that going to affect their cap and worrying
Cap's
about the rest
up.
of the line? Of course. The cap is going up as well. But like the Islanders are basically saying, give us a reason to pay you. Give us a reason to give you 4, 5, 6 years, whatever it is, and throw, a few million into that. Now is his chance. And, we'll find out at the end of the season whether they're giving him another, short, term extension or a little money, or if they try to put him in a deal and saying that, hey, this guy needs a change of scenery and it's not working out here. That could happen too. But this is on Wahsltrom now. He's a big boy now. He's been with the franchise for a couple of years. Like, get out there, show you're worth your hype and all that kind of stuff. Start scoring some goals and make it happen because as we've named, there are plenty of guys on this team that can slot in and fill a role where he can be the outside man looking in. So it's time to shine.
Yeah, he needs to be a threat.
Yep.
There you go.
Next up from Rectify Gaming, he asks,
hey,
what's the confidence level with Bolduc? Does he impress during the preseason?
I think it was very underwhelming. We talked about it before, but I think the Islanders organization wanted to see Bolduc win the job from Aho and make it not even close. And you could argue that Aho wasn't great, but at the same time, Aho has the experience. I think Aho was your second best defenseman in the playoffs last year. I think last year by far was Aho's best season as an NHLer, and he brings more stability. Yeah. And Bolduc he's making those rookie mistakes. Again, he was a rookie, but he's making them in preseason. He doesn't seem to have the awareness, and the timing is all off, and I don't think you could trust him right now. Now, again, practicing and making the team one obviously will help his confidence, but practicing every day is huge. But yeah, he had the chance to really win an opportunity here and start the season as the go-to guy, and if it struggled, then go back to Aho like we saw last year with Salo. Salo won the job, and then it didn't work out, but unfortunately, Bolduc just did not do enough in anyone's eyes to win that job. I mean, we're assuming so. We'll see what the lineup's like on Saturday, but unless Bolduc has some amazing week, I can't see him winning the spot.
Yeah, unless he has some great practices.
If he's shutting down the Horvat and Barzal left and right, yeah.
Right, yeah, for sure. Yeah, and he's just another guy who needs to grow, and it's been noted all over the hockey world, the hockey space, is that defensemen sometimes take a little longer to develop, and, their curve are going to be a little different than forwards. I think that they still have high expectations for him.
For sure.
I think that they still, see him as a guy who's eventually going to wrestle a spot away on this team. It just might not be there yet.
And we talked about it too, is COVID affected a lot. He was part of that COVID where they lost out on the season, and he was hurt the year before. So development-wise, it took a hit for him, and he might be a little more delayed than we expect, but that's a second-rounder that the Islanders really need to see hit because they need help on that.
They're
on the
almost lucky that Aho kind of did have a coming out party last season.
If not,
to give him a little more time to develop,
If not, the Islanders probably needed to go and get a defenseman this summer. And
some would probably still argue they still needed to get somebody.
Yes,
but
that's true.
That's neither here nor there. Ed, what do you got next?
Mel Armenia, 22.
What's up, Mel?
Welcome back, by the way. I feel like I haven't seen you in forever. Is Lambert fired if the Islanders missed the playoffs? And I feel like we had a similar answer with Andrew Gross last week. I don't know if Mel probably wasn't there. But he said he was somewhere along the lines of he's on a tight leash.
I'll say this. I mean, if they get off to a bad start and they're not even in contention a quarter of the way into the season,
it's over.
You might see him getting the boot even sooner. This is a team that has to win now. And Lane Lambert, he's not on the hot seat at least yet, but there's at least a couple of flames under the on the burner there just in case, because this is a team who if they don't come out of the gate here, Lou might be like, all right, I got to cut the cord to try to right the ship, because a lost season is not going to be acceptable for this team.
Well, I think also you have to look at it as again, we've seen that the Islanders ownership doesn't want to get rid of Lou, but if Lambert's going and they miss the playoffs, I think Lou's going. So I think Lou has not a lot to lose in terms of his career, but if Lambert gets off to a bad start early and it's like first 5, 6, 7 games and the Islanders don't have a win, Lou's not going to sit there and be like, oh, Lambert, I'll give you more time, because time is ticking on Lou, whether it's this year, next year, the year after, and he's not going to go down without a fight.
I agree. If they get to the end of the season, he's still the coach and they don't make the playoffs, I do see Lambert getting fired. Lou, I'm not so sure about. But I definitely think that Lambert has to have at least a playoff successful season. And
again, we talked about the reasons why they should make it. Coming out flat, whether it's on the leadership group in the room, that's going to come back to Lane, and that can't happen anymore, really.
Joey Pickles, I just want to touch again on basically what now for Josh Bailey. So what do you guys see personally for him?
So we know for a fact, because he said it at these exit interviews last year. I saw him over the summer at Matt Martin's camp. He wants to retire, and when he ever does retire, he's going to stay on Long Island. He loves it here. All of his friends are here. They're his kids,
family kids.
His kids though are also close with Martin's kids, and Cizikas' not Martin's kids, but Cizikas' kids, Clutter's kids. This is a really tight knit group, and I do think when he does retire, whenever it may be, he'll work with the Islanders if he does want to work in hockey or development, things like that. But as for what's next, I can't see him going overseas for the family aspect. I know Ottawa was close enough where his family wouldn't have to move. But right now it's, he's a free agent now. So he's only going to go to a place that makes sense for his family. And if it is nowhere close by, I could see him retiring, but that's ultimately up to him. And we really shouldn't be, we can't say what he's going to do.
Yeah, he might just be a dad for a little while.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I know his kids are starting travel too. And as people who have parents who did travel, or you're a kid that did travel, that is a lot of time on the road, a lot of weekends, and that's good bonding too.
There you go. Ed, what's next?
We got another one from Mr. Tom Boyle.
Okay.
Is Pajot capable of scoring 20 goals?
Oh, for sure.
I think capable is certainly a word I would agree with.
But again, you would love Pajot if you're an Islander fan to see him score 20. But at the same time, he has Lee on his wing, and whatever you want to say about Lee, and his skating went down. Lee scored 28 goals last year. He's good for 25 goals a year. And Pajot really hasn't had, Parise was a weapon offensively last year, but wasn't the year before that. If Fasten's on that line, maybe he comes through more. But Pajot, let's not even go with goals. Karako, he had a career high in assists last year. If Lee still is able to find the back of the net, and they have a guy like Fashion who does bring offense, or Wahsltrom is on that line, forget the goals for Pajot. Let him be an assistman and play that sound defensive hockey, which is his bread and butter, is winning those faceoffs and doing the other things. That way his line can be more offensive if need be.
Anything else, Ed?
That was pretty much the last one.
That'll do it for Questions Brewing. So before we wrap, we're introducing a new concept to the show here. We're going to see how this goes, but we're inviting you, the listeners, the viewers, the fans, for a fan rant of the month. We are going to basically invite you to send us a video, a clip of yourself under a minute long. We're going to give you the topic each month. This month is, what are your expectations for the season? And tell us why. And you can DM us at Hockey Night NY. You can send us your videos there. And we will choose the best one for the show at the end of the month, and we will play it during the show. And if this takes off and you guys are into it, we'll do it every month, and we'll see what you guys got to say. So why don't you get your phones out?
No cursing.
No, yeah. And if you're just, going to bash the guys and say this guy sucks and this guy's worthless, so those videos probably aren't going to make it. We're looking for constructive. It doesn't mean, you can't have your opinions about how
critical.
players. Yeah, you could be critical. We'll probably have a fan rant 1 month saying who's pulling their weight or who's not or whatever. We'll get there. But, if you're just going to basically be slinging garbage, I mean, you're wasting your own time and ours. That video is not going to get chosen. But we do want to get some feedback from you guys. So fan rant of the month, send us your videos again at Hockey Night NY. Send us a DM there, and we will pick the best one, and we'll play it the last week of October. So that is a little invitation for you. And with that, we are going to get on out of here. So big thanks to Mr. Arthur Stapleback, covering the New York Islanders for The Athletic. You can follow him on Twitter if you're not already at Stape Athletic. A big thanks to Blue Line Deli and Bagels, located at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington and 217 Carlton Avenue in East Islip. Check out the menu and order ahead at BlueLineDeli.com. Also, a big thanks to Main Street Board Game Cafe, located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Find out how to unplug your game at MainSTBoardGameCafe.com. And a big thanks to new sponsor Razor and Kniff, attorneys at law. Nobody likes going to court, but when you have to, they are the best attorneys in the land here in New York. Remember, you can call them for a free consultation at 516-742-7600. They are ready to fight for you. And, of course, a big thanks to Floored Media here in Rockville Center. And, folks, maybe this is your first show. Maybe you're just tuning in for the first time. Make sure you rate, review, and subscribe. Show us some love or show us some hate if you don't like what we're doing. Tell us what we're doing wrong. Tell us what we can improve. And, tell your friends, spread the word. You can follow us at Hockey Night NY on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all that good stuff. Stefen, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Stefen_Rosner. That's STEFEN_Rosner. Islanders Hockey News and NHL.com.
You can follow myself on Twitter. I refuse to call it X. At Shawnee Hockey, at SEANY Hockey. So, for Stefen Rosner, for Ed and Jake, for Floored Media, for myself, I've been Sean Cuthbert. We've been Hockey Night New York. Have a great rest of your Sunday night. Enjoy opening night on Saturday. We will see you next week.